So, Minister, very good morning. I am so excited to be in conversation with you.
Morning, Dr. Mayor, and yes, thank you for having me. It's just been over, I think, a month since we were here with our GERI Workshop, so it's good to be back. It's almost like home away from home.
Thank you, that's wonderful. So, you are the Provincial Minister for Social Development in the Western Cape Government. Please tell us the focus of your work.
The Department of Social Development is really geared at protecting the most vulnerable in society. Many of our programs are directed or there to support vulnerable groupings. So we would look at older persons, we would look at child protection. More importantly, a topic that is very close to my heart is that of gender-based violence and substance use disorder, because those are key drivers of violence in society. And as a survivor of gender-based violence, I took it upon myself to champion the cause, and then Cabinet mandated me to be the lead minister for gender-based violence in the province. And you might know, we have hotspots where gender-based violence have really gone off the charts. And so for me, it becomes important that we are intentional in the way we do our work. In the ministry, it is a personal passion of mine, and the ministry staff have bought into it. We also do a lot of education and awareness workshops in rural communities around gender, gender equity, and gender sensitivity. So that's sort of, there are lots of other programs. We do feeding programs, social relief of distress, but it's mostly focused on vulnerable groupings, yes.
So it was very humbling recently to have you as a participant in the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International Workshop that was held here at the Academy. I must say it was the first for government in the country. So you were present there. What motivated you to attend a GERI workshop?
Dr. Mayor, somehow my interest was piqued. I think I saw on the Chrysalis Academy Facebook page that you were doing GERI with the graduates that come through the program, the Chrysalis program. And I thought that was interesting because, I mean, how does this connect? And then I had an opportunity to meet Desiree English in terms of trauma counseling and support. And we then started talking about healing and trauma. And she indicated that GenderWorks was quite involved with GERI. But unbeknown to me, I had on Facebook clicked onto a link one day, and I actually went into a teaser 90-minute session online. It was a global session, and I think it was done out of Spain, if I remember correctly. But that 90 minutes literally changed my life. I could not believe that in 90 minutes, you'd go into a breakaway room, you would speak to someone there were people from Africa, from Spain, from the Eastern European countries, but we were strangers on a virtual platform, but in the breakaway rooms, we connected at such a deep level. And since that teaser, GERI has sort of been growing inside of me. You know, I'm wanting to know more, and I would possibly want to become a facilitator one day if I could, because I do believe we all have a duty to heal our broken, wounded society.
So you spent 2 days in the GERI workshop, and what did you find the most valuable, the most useful for you? What challenged you the most?
Doc, it was not a workshop as we would know a workshop to be. So firstly, there was no death by PowerPoint, because I think many attendees thought it's a 2-day session, we'll get a handout and off we go. And I myself, when we sat in the circle and we saw the centerpiece, how beautifully laid out it was, I thought, well, this is different. There was a sense of trust and care, and almost, I felt safe. That's the one thing. I felt safe enough to bare my soul, and it wasn't difficult because, you know, you have staff, you have external stakeholders, you have local government representatives, and they all know you as the minister. But I got so involved, immersed in the program, that I just felt compelled to speak at the time that I spoke. And I wasn't even mindful of whether people were going to judge me or, you know, we didn't know this or that, because for me, it was about me and the process, the facilitation, it was just, it challenged me, because I actually had to go back deep into my past, and I had to deal with issues of anger and fear, the reminder of molestation, the violence in the home, the impact of the trauma on the family, you know, all of that surfaced, and I thought I dealt with it. In my mind, I believed, you know, when I walked out of that, it was done. But coming and being a participant in the circle, feeling safe, made me realize I actually do need to talk to what is going on. And on day one, I left here, but I was almost exhausted. And I don't know what it was, because, you know, we were all sitting quietly. The respect in the room really got to me. But when I got home and I had that hot shower, I think within an hour, I was out for the count. And I don't know, but I think many other attendees experienced day one in that same way. But it was profound because it made me look deep inside myself. I had to do introspection. And then what was valuable, or in fact what scared me, was the extent that men suffer, the extent of the pain and the trauma that men suffer in silence, because it's not appropriate for men to talk about these things. Now, there was confidentiality, but whilst we were listening to people speaking spontaneously, what I took away was the fact that our men are deeply wounded and hurting. And that for me is the breakthrough. Because if we want to counter gender-based violence, it cannot be through the lens of a woman, a child, or the LGBTQIA+ community only. Boys and men need to be part of that conversation.
Thank you, and I can see how you were touched by the workshop as I'm looking at you.
Absolutely.
And feeling the emotion that you had. So thank you for sharing that in such a public space. It is appreciated. So you are the lead minister in the Western Cape Provincial Government in this campaign against gender-based violence. Can you say a little bit more about the relevance of this deep storytelling for our campaign against gender-based violence?
Dr. Mayer, I think what became very apparent to me after the workshop was that we cannot continue to employ the same old methods to combat gender-based violence, because despite our best efforts, you know, in terms of legislation, the safety and security aspect, there needs to be the component of healing. And it's not just healing of a select group of people. We come from a very traumatized background. Apartheid has left deep scars on the psyche of the nation. And so many of our communities are wounded, and they are experiencing intergenerational trauma, which is passed on from generation to generation. There's also the cultural issues, the gender bias that exist. And sometimes when you're dealing with data is a set of stats. When we sat in this room, the stories underpin the stats. But I think there are a lot of stories that are still untold. And GERI will be able to help us expand that work, the healing work, in communities with faith-based organizations, with select groups at a time, so that we can focus on the areas where it is the greatest. So you might know that in government we have what is called a safety plan. Our safety plan is based on the Cardiff model. We have what is called a violence prevention unit, which sits in the Department of Health and Wellness. And then, of course, there's gender-based violence, which is in the Department of the Premier, as well as in social development. But we're dealing academically with gender-based violence in terms of stats, and the stats are important because they guide us to where we need to focus. But I think what is missing, or up until I came to GERI, what is missing in the equation is that humanness. So I often ask the question when I hear these brutal attacks on women, what has happened to our humanity? And so this is healing at a much deeper level that is required, because we cannot put a band-aid on a huge gaping wound. And so there is serious trauma. So I believe in trauma-informed care and counseling, and we're bringing that into our schools as well. So it is not just a social development initiative, it is a transversal whole of government exercise. And I would certainly want to expose my cabinet colleagues and senior management to the GERI experience, because I always think it's important, if you're launching any campaign, you need to understand what underpins that. And I would now want to bring this into the GBV space, but it is important that those, the different components are aware of GERI. We did have someone from health and wellness. We had various departments represented, and I believe many of them went back and spoke very, very favorably of their experience, and actually said more staff need to undergo this experience. I personally would like to see our social workers. We do have social workers that are dedicated to gender-based violence work, and I would want to see that cohort of social workers going through the program, obviously with permission and a solid briefing. We had 2 of them, I think, on the course with us, but I'd like to see the entire cohort of GBV social workers able to experience what deep healing and the gender equality is actually, gender equity is actually at the core of it. So we're focusing on gender-based violence, but there's the disparity, there's this imbalance, and that's a mind shift change, which will result in a behavioral change. And we need to change it one family, one street, one block, one community at a time.
So, Minister, you alluded to the sharing of stories, the sharing of what happened to us in the past. Can you share a bit more about your experience of the power of storytelling?
I get goosebumps now thinking about the day when the 2 days we spent together listening to the stories. The stories are powerful, and every story is unique. Every story must be told. And there are so many stories that are untold. And there are many of us who live with our stories inside of us. And for me, what GERI did, it brought the story out. And I think the power of the group story served almost as a glue that bonded us as a group. Because when we came in, we were just individuals. By the time we had done the honoring exercise, you know, the women honoring the men and the men honoring the women, it felt like we were family and we knew each other all our lives. So I think the impact of the story on all the other attendees, for me, I gained a deep respect just listening to some of the shares. Because when I walked in this room, I had no idea what he or she was going through or had endured. But I also saw the liberation of the human spirit. By telling that story, there was almost a sense of relief after the story. Wow, it's out, it's dealt. You know, now what do we do next? And so for me, how do we keep the stories alive so that we can get to a point of what we call healing? Because right now, that was a starter. But healing is a journey. And so we're going to need to expose our vulnerabilities along this journey. But for me, the storytelling was in such a safe space that at no point did I feel vulnerable. You know, we were a close-knit group. We had committed, we had agreed to what we would do, what we wouldn't do. And I think that set the tone for the day as well, because some people probably came in with a different view of the day, yes. But the stories will stay with me for as long. And I realized my story too is a powerful one. And by sharing our stories, we can actually help others who are in similar situations. So your test becomes your testimony, and your mess becomes your message in terms of the storytelling.
You are a mother to a son. Can you share a bit about how the stories by the men, without sharing detail, just the process of how that landed with you, being a mom of a son?
It was very deep. It was very emotional. In fact, when I got home, I had to ask my son for permission to give me space, because we have what is called the solutions sofa. So when I get home from a long, hard day, I disengage my phone, we have dinner, and then we spend 30 minutes on the solutions sofa. And he was saying, so are we not on the sofa tonight? So I said, son, tonight I'm a little tired, man. It was actually a hard day. And he says, Mom, what was so hard about the day? And then I said to him, I went to a GERI workshop. And unbeknown to me, he says, was that virtual webinar thing you were on, program you were on? He said, I walked past and it seemed quite interesting. So I could take the men's stories, and that night I actually lay and I thought about my son's pain. You know, his journey he's been on, and he's always wanting to talk. Thankfully, I listen. I always say to him, I'm not a trained professional. I can't help you, but I can listen. So I listen. And even though he's, well or not, 7 years into his journey, there is still lots of healing to be done. I mean, just recently he spoke about being hijacked in Khayelitsha. And when we look at the level of violence in our society, especially on the Cape Flats and in our townships, our young people, our communities are soaked in trauma. And I took the stories of the men and I took it home and I reflected on my son and his journey, and it gave me a greater appreciation. Because when I got home on day 2, I was less emotional, because there was a serious shift that took place for me in those 2 days. A new level of consciousness, if you can call it that. Also deep emotion that I probably had tried to suppress or, park somewhere, that all surfaced. And then I had the conversation with him and I said, you know what, son, it's okay for us to talk about this. I think GERI, for me, highlighted the pain our men are experiencing. And for too long, we've been focusing on the girl child and women. And just yesterday, I spoke at a women's conference and I talked about, please do not underestimate the pain of boys and men. And one of the attendees, delegates, actually stood up at the end in the question and answer time and said, it's so great to hear the minister acknowledge the pain of boys and men, because it is not only women, the LGBTQIA plus children who are hurting. And she was very clear about that, yes. Because there were quite a group of feminists in the room, but she said, I'm not a feminist, but I do need to say that women abuse men too. And we experienced that in the workshop. Well, we got insight into some of the brutality that men were exposed to in an apartheid era. Having to go to the army, the trauma they suffered when they were in these camps. My partner, being a white South African, passed away recently, but he passed away with his story untold. Because every time my son would ask him about the army, he would shut down. So he died with his story untold, yes.
Thank you. So, Minister, there are people who may be listening to this clip who are experiencing gender-based violence now. What is your message to them? What is your message of hope? What is your message of action?
It's important for anyone experiencing gender-based violence to understand that you are not alone and that it is not your fault. Many people stay in abusive relationships because they believe it's their fault. And then more importantly, I would encourage anyone in terms of gender to seek help and support, rather than experience the trauma which will take you into a downward spiral. There is help available. I'm certain in most countries in the world, there is help available. In our country, we have what is called in South Africa, we have the Gender-Based Command Call Center. That's a 0800 428 428 number. And we also have facilities where people can access services and support. So my message is to anyone out there, you are not alone. It is not your fault. Please seek help, and there will be help and support provided to you. But you do need to step out of that space. And I know that that takes courage. Because for me as a survivor, I was in denial. And everybody else knew except me. And so to many women who are in abusive relationships where there's possibly economic abuse, and they are reliant on the finances, so they stay in that relationship. And if you think you're in a relationship because you need the money to pay the school fees, the damage that is being done to the child or children far outweighs staying in that abusive relationship. Unfortunately, that has been my experience.
So the Gender Equity Reconciliation International Movement celebrated 30 years last year. Can you share a message of motivation why people should consider at least attending a taster or perhaps a 3-day or 2-day workshop, whatever is available?
I personally want to say congratulations to Gender Equity Reconciliation International for the work that they are doing. For any project to be sustained over a 30-year period, I think speaks volumes. It also has a global footprint, and I think when we look at the state of the world today, there's war, there's violence, there's all sorts of things are going wrong in society, which I often say, I question what has happened to our humanity. And what the GERI workshops and the GERI program does, it allows healing to take place at a personal level. And I believe we should get GERI circles up and running in our most vulnerable communities where people are experiencing deep trauma. Train the trainer, get the facility. I would love to become a facilitator one day when I have time. But we need to roll GERI out exponentially in South Africa, within Africa, and globally. Because we are just a microcosm in the Western Cape of what is happening in our country. And if you look at the continent, it's quite bleak. So I do believe there is space and place, and I think in terms of timing, the timing is now. And if we are intentional, we will act with urgency, and we will make every effort to roll GERI out, and I will certainly throw my weight 110% behind it, because I have experienced the healing benefit. I'm still on my journey, but I am much lighter for the experience, yes. Thank you, Dr. Mayor.
The time is now. Thank you so very much, Minister, for your time and your insights. They are appreciated. Thank you.
Like they say, secund jalo. Yes, there we go.
Thank you.